A very good morning to Doctor. We are from Group 5 and today we are going to talk about audit of property, plant and equipment. So before I start presenting, let me introduce myself. My name is Revati Dr. Selvaraju and my metric number is 264542. Okay, so these are the contents that we are going to explain in this video. First, we have introductions, then property, plant and equipment, audit objective and control, accounting policy of PPE, developing audit plan, substantive procedures of PPE and conclusion. Next, we will see into the introduction. Okay, this cycle is mainly to examine the process of audit of PPE. It is also discussing both the test of control and substantive tests for auditing of PPE. Second, is an asset is classified as a PPE or otherwise it's depending upon the use of to which it is put or intended to put. For example, asset which classified as PPE is one type of business may be considered as current asset in another. Similarly, the same asset may be classified differently in an entity at different point of time. Okay, next we will see PPE refer to non-current asset held by an enterprise, where it is to assist an organization in the production or supply goods or service and are used for more than one accounting period. So that's all from me. Let me pass to my partner.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Nur Fatira binti Muhammad Lipin. My metric number is 264275. I will explain about property, plant and equipment which is usually known as PPE. PPE is a non-current, tangible capital asset that is shown in the balance sheet of a business and used to generate revenue and profit. It is used for the production or supply of goods or service, for rental to others or for the administrative purpose. It is assumed that any PPE will be used for more than one accounting period. So, what are the examples of the PPE? The example of the PPE is a land and building which might be freehold and leasehold by the company. Other than that, machinery, vehicle and furniture are examples of plant and equipment that usually will be held under finance lease since the cost is high. So, how it will be recorded? The PPE will be recorded at the net of accumulated depreciation in the balance sheet. This implies that net PPE could be slightly decreased in value per year due to depreciation if the company does not buy any additional of new PPE. This can be better determined with a depreciation schedule. So, what are the key concerns of PPE? The key concern in the Ppe auditing is the transaction involving the acquisition of new asset and the disposal of an old asset, including the gain in profit or loss during the sale of the asset. Other than that, the measure of the depreciation of the PPE and the treatment of leased properties and the revaluation of assets are also taken in the account.
Hi, my name is Nur Aisha, metric number 264278. I will present the audit objective and control. The specific audit objective for PPE are divided into three categories, which are first is transaction objective. These objectives in audit property, plant and equipment are to determine the occurrence of PPE transaction. For example, additions are recorded representing the purchase or granting non-current asset, and disposals are also recorded representing the occurrence of sales or disposal during the audit period. Next is to establish completeness for recorded PPE. It is to ensure all additions and disposal of non-current asset that occur during the accounting period have been well recorded. In fact, it is to determine the accuracy in the PPE schedule, where all acquisition and disposal of PPE is journalized and posted accurately. This objective also determines the cut-off of PPE costs before and after the accounting period. For example, addition and disposal of PPE before the end period are recorded in the current period, while those after the period end are recorded in the following accounting period. This is also for establishing the correct classification and recording PPE where the acquisitions and disposal of non-current assets are recorded in the correct amount. Second category is balance objective. It are to determine the existence of recorded property, plant and equipment through recorded PPE, which represent non-current productive asset used at the end of the accounting period. Next, it is for establishing right and obligation to the PPE, where the entity has a right or ownership to all recorded non-current asset at the end of the accounting period. Besides, these balance objectives are to determine the completeness of PPE, where it is determined through PPE balance, including all non-current asset used in the operation at the end of period. In fact, it is to establish the valuation and allocation of PPE costs in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, whether PPE is stated at cost or valuation less accumulated depreciation. Third category is presentation and disclosure objective. For its objective, it is to determine the occurrence and right and obligation of disclosed PPE by disclose the PPE transaction that occurred. Next is to determine the completeness in disclosure of the PPE, which it is about whether PPE is measured at cost or valuation, determine a proper amount of depreciation expense, estimated useful life of each PPE, and others. In addition, these objectives are to ensure classification and understandability. When disclosed is excellent, where when the acquisition and disposal of PPE have details that support their classification. Lastly, it is to determine the accuracy and evaluation in the disclosure of PPE, where non-current asset transactions are disclosed accurately and in appropriate amount.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Nur Farizatul Aisyah binti Muhammad Jamil and my metric number is 264301, and today I would like to explain on accounting policies of plant, property and equipment. Okay, the first one is depreciation expense. Auditor should perform a depreciation expense test on company's PPE. There are two methods, which is recalculating depreciation expense and analytical procedure. Under analytical procedure, auditor will make expectation regarding depreciation expense and then compare it with the actual amount. And the formula used for expectation depreciation is cost plus additional PPE minus disposal, and then multiply it with depreciation rate. Okay, the second one is repair and maintenance cost. There are many companies that prefer to capitalize their expense because it will enhance their assets balance without affecting their liability balance. Therefore, auditor need to check if there's any possibility that expenditure was wrongly classified as revenue or vice versa. For example, if company incurred costs on assets to extend its capability or capacity, then the cost need to be capitalized. Okay, the third one is capital work in progress. Auditor need to ensure that the assets are still under construction or pending installation. Auditors should confirm the date on which assets are moved from capital work in progress account to fixed asset account. And for example, company Z acquired 3 new machines for its new production line, which consists of machine X, machine Y, and machine Z. And those 3 machines are purchased on 20 July. Machine X and machine Y are fully installed on 1st September, while machine Z was fully installed on 2nd October. So, auditor need to ensure that the journal are recorded correctly. So, for 20 July, the debit side would be work in progress for the 3 machines, while the debit side would be cash or account payable. For 1st September, no journal entries required as all the machines are not ready to use since the production line is not ready. And for the 2nd October, on debit side is machine X, machine Y, and machine Z. And for the credit side would be work in progress for those 3 machines. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
I am Ramna Prabha and my matrix number is 264574. In developing audit plan, there are few transactions relating to PPE which are normally individually material. Thus, assessment of control risk relating to these transactions are rarely necessary. Having said this, an appropriate audit strategy is considering all the factors such as materiality, inherent risk, and plant register, which are necessary in auditing. As mentioned, materiality defined according to ISA 320 is the key characteristic of a misstatement that are considered to be material or if they can possibly influence the decision of a user who uses the financial statement. The concept of materiality is important to the audit, which is applied at the planning stage and evaluates the effect of identified misstatement on the audit and when performing an audit and also effects of uncorrected misstatement on the financial statement by the auditor. Secondly, inherent risk. Inherent risk is expected to occur in a situation that are likely to require high degree of judgment in respect of financial estimation in a financial audit. There may be variation of inherent risk for assertion relating to different types of PPE accounts, which is low merchandising entity, because plant and equipment are not normally vulnerable to theft. PPE verification involves less time and cost than verification of a current asset. PPE transactions are individually material. Finally, for the plant register. An entity often maintains a plant register as a subsidiary ledger detailing out individual items of plant and equipment. The register records the cost of each asset and any addition or adjustment or alteration and accumulated depreciation charged against it. Balances in the register reconcile with the written down value. From time to time, the entity may be carry out an inventory of plant and equipment to identify the unrecorded disposal of fully depreciated item. Control over maintenance of the register is important in auditing, which is only for the assets that are vulnerable to misappropriation.
Now, I will explain about the substantive procedure for PPE. What are substantive procedure? Substantive procedure or substantive theft are those activities that is performed by auditor to detect and reduce material misstatement or fraud at the assertion level and provide audit evidence on the reliability of the accounting record in order to form and support the audit opinion. The appropriate audit strategy is to substantive testing on detailed transaction and account balance that is related to PPE. Substantive procedure involve analytical procedure, substantive testing on account at the balance sheet level, and substantive testing on transaction at the income statement level. The first step in explaining audit procedure is to identify the assertion that need to be tested for the PPE. The assertion embodied in financial statement are used to the auditor to consider the different types of potential misstatement that might occur to PPE. The auditor will assess the risk of material misstatement and design substantive procedure to test the following assertion, which are the completeness, existence, right and obligation, valuation, and the last one is presentation and disclosure of PPE. For the PPE audit, the auditor will test the completeness assertion to ensure that all PPE transactions that occur during the year have been recorded in the financial statement. There are 4 substantive procedures for the completeness, which are the first one. The auditor will select one of the sample PPE from the observation and trace the PPE register. Second, they will check the PPE addition to sale and purchase agreement for the purchase of land and supplier invoice for purchase of the office equipment. Third, The auditor will check the PPE addition and disposal to minute of meetings with the board of directors to confirmation on authorization. And the fourth one, the auditor will reconcile and compare the PPE register with the general ledger. Next, the auditor will test the existence assertion to ensure that all PPE balance shown in the balance sheet really exists at the reporting date. This means the assets, liability, and equity interests are physically belong to the entity on the reporting date. PPE may include assets that should be de-recognized following sale, other transfers or rights, or abandonment. Auditors should verify title deeds, agreements, or other ownership documents. The substantive test of existence on PPE audit, including select the sample of item in the PPE register and perform physical inspection on the selected item. When performing the physical inspection of PPE, we need to make sure that not only the selected item really exists, but they also need to be in a working condition. Right and obligation assertion test is done by auditor to check whether the business has the right and ownership of all the PPE shown in the financial statement at the reporting date. The entity is obligated to pay off the liabilities that are shown in the statement of financial position. The substantive procedure are based on the type of PPE. First, the auditor needs to select a sample of Ppe item in the register and then examine the title document or the title deed of the selected item to ensure that they are really belong to the business. For the freehold land and building, the auditor should inspect a title deed. Meanwhile, for the leasehold land and building, the auditor will inspect a lease agreement with the landlord. Next, for the motor vehicle, the auditor should inspect a registration document. Lastly, for the other types of PPE, the auditor will inspect a purchase invoice. In the audit of PPE, the auditor needs to test the valuation assertion to ensure the PPE balance are mathematically correct and proper valuation method has been made to calculate it. This means that all items has been included in the financial statement at appropriate amount according to the company policy and relevant financial reporting framework. The auditor needs to review the depreciation method to evaluate whether it is accordance with the applicable accounting standard. First of all, the auditor needs to examine whether PPE is valued properly at the lower price of cost or market. The auditor needs to check the cost to purchase invoice and purchase documentation. They need to reconcile the values stated in the entire document related. Next, the auditor needs to review the depreciation method to evaluate whether it is in accordance with the applicable accounting standard and examine the useful life of PPE to evaluate whether it is reasonable or not. The auditor needs to check the profit or loss on PPE disposal whether it is calculated and documented correctly. Lastly, the auditor needs to check on the PPE that is been evaluating whether the value amount is reasonable comparing to the industry standard. The last assertion is the presentation and disclosure test whether all the appropriate information and disclosure about PPE are included in a company's statements and all the information presented in the statement is fair and easy to understand. The substantive procedure for the presentation and disclosure is the auditors need to determine that PPE asset and related expense, gains, loss are properly identified and classified in the financial statement. Next, the auditor have to determine the appropriateness of disclosure pertaining to a cost, a value, depreciation method, and the useful lives of major class of asset, the pledging of assets as collaterals, and the term of lease contract. The auditor should inspect accounting policies including the depreciation and rates and the detail of movement of cost and accumulated depreciation during the year.
Next is conclusion. In verifying PPE, auditor verify changes in the recorded balance and inspect addition. Transaction involving PPE has to which is infrequent and matter usually subject to special treatment. Thus, auditor relay tax control over non-current asset. Transition preferring to adopt a predominantly substantive approach. PPE most likely to be overstated than understated. Besides, misstatement occurred in the area of valuation tend to be an understatement of depreciation. In this case, they impact both of the balance sheet and income statement, and it may be result in an overstatement of both PPE and net profit. So that's all from our group. Thank you.